France is facing a crisis, and at the center of it all is Niger. Just a few days ago, a stunning announcement rocked Paris. Orano, the French uranium company responsible for lighting up nearly 40% of France, revealed it's teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. The cause? Niger's new military government has slammed strict export restrictions on uranium, choking off the supply that France depends on to keep its lights burning. But that's only half the story. Niger's government has gone even further, declaring its plan to nationalize the country's uranium mines completely. In other words, the uranium buried beneath Niger's soil will no longer be under foreign control. It will belong entirely to Niger. Now, a tense question looms large. Will Orano, and by extension France, simply walk away from these precious resources? Or will they fight tooth and nail to protect their billion-dollar investments and keep the power flowing back home? The stakes couldn't be higher, and the world is waiting to see what happens next. On June 19, 2025, the military government of Niger dropped a political and economic bombshell. They announced they're starting the process to nationalize their uranium, a resource that, until now, has been firmly under the grip of France's uranium giant, Orano. And for those who don't know, Orano is 90% owned by the French government itself. That means, for more than 50 years, the French state has been calling the shots over Niger's uranium. Imagine that. One country's critical natural resource controlled for decades by a foreign government. Orano has been digging uranium out of Niger's soil since the 1990s, operating with a virtual monopoly. And here's the shocking part. They've paid next to nothing in taxes to Niger's government. Thanks to a lopsided tax treaty between France and Niger, Orano and other French companies have been shielded from paying their fair share. Yes, you heard that right. For decades, Niger's uranium wealth has poured out of the country, while the nation itself saw little benefit. But now, the military leaders in Niger are saying, enough is enough. They're nationalizing the uranium mines. In simple terms, the era of France's dominance over Niger's uranium is ending. From this moment on, Niger's uranium belongs to Niger, and it's up to the government to ensure it finally serves the people. Under this nationalization, all shares and assets of Somaïr, one of Orano's key operations in Niger, will be fully transferred to the Nigerian state. Former shareholders will be compensated, but only after meeting all their legal obligations, including the costs of cleaning up and rehabilitating the mining sites. Somaïr's board of directors has already been dissolved, and for now, the current executives will stay on in a transitional role until the new leadership takes full control. This is a turning point for Niger, and a moment of reckoning for France. The world is watching to see how this high-stakes power shift will play out. Just weeks after Niger's explosive announcement to nationalize its uranium, officials from Orano stepped forward with troubling news of their own. They revealed that Somaïr, the joint venture they created with Niger, is teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. To understand the stakes, we need to look back. Somaïr was born in 1968 and kicked off mining operations in 1971, deep in the desert town of Arlit, in Niger's Agadez region. On paper, it was a partnership. Orano owns 63.4%, while Niger's state company, Somaïr, holds 36.6%. The deal was simple. The uranium extracted from Somaïr would be split between the partners based on those ownership shares. But when Niger's new government dug into the numbers, what they uncovered painted a very different picture. From 1971 all the way to 2024, Somaïr pulled a staggering 81,861 tons of uranium from the ground. Yet, out of all that production, 82.3% ended up in Orano's hands, while a mere 9.2% went to Niger's state company. The numbers were glaring. Orano was taking far more uranium than its stake entitled it to, pocketing the lion's share of the mine's wealth. This wasn't just an accounting error, it was one of the major triggers that led Niger's military government to say, enough. The decision to nationalize Somaïr's mines wasn't just about reclaiming resources. It was about correcting decades of imbalance, and finally ensuring Niger's uranium serves Niger's future. Now, as Orano faces bankruptcy and Niger stands its ground, the battle over Somaïr has become more than a business dispute. It's a showdown over justice, sovereignty, and the true cost of foreign control. And the world is watching what happens next. But Orano isn't going quietly. The French uranium giant has fiercely denied the accusations from Niger's government. They claim that the military ruler's push to nationalize the Somaïr mine is part of what they call a systematic policy of stripping mining assets. And they're not just talking. Orano is threatening legal action, determined to fight back against Niger's decision to reclaim its mines. According to Orano, they plan to demand full compensation for what they describe as damages suffered. They insist they still have rights to uranium stock produced by Somayer up to this point. In other words, the company isn't ready to let go of its billion-dollar stake without a battle. But here's the reality. While Orano prepares for a courtroom fight, Niger's government holds the upper hand. Under international law, Niger does have the sovereign right to nationalize its own natural resources. If the courts reject Orano's claims, the company stands to lose all its assets in Niger, and very soon. And even if Orano somehow wins in court, there's another harsh truth waiting. Niger's authorities have already revoked Orano's mining permit for the Somaïr operations. So, no matter how the legal drama unfolds, one thing is certain. Orano's chapter in Niger's uranium industry has come to a decisive end. This isn't just a corporate dispute. It's a clash over power, resources, and the future of a nation determined to write its own story. And the world is watching every move. But here's something many people don't know. Niger's decision to nationalize the Somaïr mines didn't just come out of the blue. It's the climax of decades of frustration and an unbalanced relationship with France and its uranium giant, Orano. Back in the 2000s, Niger's then-president, Mamadou Tanja, decided it was time to change the game. For nearly 40 years, Orano had enjoyed a near-total monopoly over Niger's uranium, paying next to nothing to the local economy. President Tanja wanted to loosen France's grip. So in 2007, he made a bold move. He signed a deal with the China Nuclear International Uranium Corporation to develop a new uranium mine. But then, something suspicious happened. Just 3 years later, President Tanja was overthrown in a coup. Whispers spread through diplomatic circles that the coup had been financed, at least in part, by Orano. And given that Orano is almost entirely owned by the French government, those whispers carried a chilling implication. Because Orano's role in Niger was never just about mining uranium. Behind the scenes, they were also acting as an arm of French soft power, quietly shaping Niger's politics, ensuring France maintained control over the country's resources and its destiny. This strategy traces all the way back to 1957, when France first discovered uranium in Niger's soil. It was the age of African nationalism. Across the continent, countries like Niger were rising up, demanding freedom and self-rule. France saw what was coming. Independence was inevitable, and they were determined to keep their grip on Niger's uranium, no matter who sat in the presidential palace. This hidden history set the stage for today's showdown, a clash not only over resources, but over Niger's right to truly chart its own future. And now, the world is watching as the truth comes to light. So France crafted a strategy, a system designed not only to exploit Niger's uranium, but also to quietly maintain control over the country's destiny. 8 years after Niger gained independence, France signed a series of secretive agreements with Niger's leaders. These deals gave France nearly unrestricted access to Niger's uranium reserves. In exchange, the leaders in Niger were promised military protection, a shield against terrorism, internal uprisings, and any political opponents who might threaten their power. France sweetened the deal with promises of development aid, and for the leaders in Niger at the time, many driven by greed rather than patriotism, that was all they needed to sign on the dotted line. The rest, as they say, is history. France established its mining company, then known as Areva, and swiftly moved in to start extracting uranium from Niger's soil. From that moment, Niger became a crucial trade partner for France, exporting uranium that powers French homes and industries with electricity. For more than 5 decades, Orano, as Areva later became, held a stranglehold on Niger's uranium industry. Year after year, they reaped enormous profits, while Niger itself saw barely any tangible benefit. The mines churned out uranium, but the wealth flowed overseas. Then, in July 2024, everything changed. A coup swept General Abdurrahmane Tiani into power. From the very beginning, he made his intentions crystal clear. He vowed to scrutinize every foreign mining deal in Niger, determined to reclaim the country's resources for its people. Since then, General Tiani hasn't wasted time. He suspended the granting of new mining licenses and ordered a full audit of the uranium sector. For the first time in decades, France's grip on Niger's uranium is slipping, and a new chapter for Niger is being written, one filled with hope, risk, and a fierce determination to finally break free from the shadows of foreign control. Perhaps things could have ended differently for Orano. Maybe if the company had simply chosen to cooperate with Niger's new authorities, it would still be digging uranium from Niger's soil. But instead, Orano chose defiance. After the coup that ousted Niger's former president, a man widely viewed as a loyal puppet of France, Paris was furious. France lashed out in several ways. They suspended visas for Nigerian citizens. They froze adoption processes. They halted flights in and out of Niger. But there was something else too, something far more strategic. Behind the scenes, France ordered Orano to stop producing uranium. They also told the company to abandon plans to begin mining at the massive Imouraren deposit. Now, here's why that matters. The Imouraren mine isn't just any mine. It holds one of the largest uranium reserves on the planet. In Niger, there are 3 big uranium deposits. The Somaïr mines, jointly owned by Niger and Orano, Cominac, whose resources have already run dry, and Imouraren, a sleeping giant of uranium wealth. Orano already held the license to operate the Imouraren mine. In fact, the company was supposed to kick off mining operations all the way back in 2015. But then, disaster struck. After the 2011 Fukushima nuclear meltdown in Japan, uranium prices collapsed. So Orano shelved the project, waiting for the market to rebound. But when General Tiani seized power in 2024, he wasn't interested in waiting any longer. He ordered Orano to start mining at Imouraren immediately. It was a clear signal. Despite the coup, Niger was willing to work with Orano, if the company was willing to work with Niger. But guess what? Orano refused, and that decision would change everything. France believed it could tighten the screws on Niger's military government. The thinking in Paris was simple. If they cut off enough lifelines, they could force the generals to surrender power back to Mohamed Bazoum, the ousted president and long seen as an ally of France. France assumed Niger's new leaders were desperate for cash, and that's why they wanted Orano to finally start mining the vast uranium reserves at Imouraren. So, France made its move. They ordered Orano to stand down. No mining, no production. And then, in a dramatic gesture, they pulled all French staff out of Niger's mines, leaving the operations crippled and silent. That's when Niger's government decided it was done playing games. But before they acted, they gave Orano one last chance. They issued a stark warning. If development work at Imouraren didn't start by June 19, 2024, Orano's license would be revoked. A week before the deadline, Orano scrambled to show signs of progress. The company issued a public statement claiming they'd resumed work at the site. Current market conditions, with a favorable increase in the price of uranium, make it possible to once again consider putting Imouraren into operation, Orano declared. But Niger wasn't buying it. On June 20th, the authorities fired off a letter to Orano with a blunt message. The company's so-called exploitation plan did not meet our expectations. Effective immediately, the Imouraren mine was returned to the public domain and stripped of all Orano's contractual rights. In that single stroke, Niger reclaimed one of the world's largest uranium deposits and sent a message that the era of foreign control was over. The question now is, how will France respond to losing its grip on Niger's radioactive treasure? But Niger's military government wasn't finished. In December, another thunderbolt hit Orano. The French uranium giant announced that Niger's military leaders had seized control of its local mining firm, Somayer. Think about it. After losing their grip on the massive Imouraren mine, Orano was left clinging to just one significant asset in Niger, the Somaïr mine. But now, even that has been taken back by the government. In one sweeping move, Niger's leaders effectively kicked Orano out of the country's uranium industry altogether, and as a result, Orano is plunging into a deep financial crisis, but the consequences aren't stopping at Orano's balance sheets. Niger's bold move is sending shockwaves across Europe. Until recently, Niger supplied around a quarter of the uranium used by Europe's nuclear power plants. And as Western nations scramble to fight climate change and cut carbon emissions, losing a critical uranium supplier couldn't have come at a worse time. The timing is almost catastrophic. Niger's mining minister, Ousmane Abarchi, didn't mince words when asked about the country's decision. He said, "As for French companies, the French state, through its head, stated that it does not recognize the current authorities of Niger. It's been over a year, and that hasn't changed. Do you think it is possible for us, the state of Niger, to allow French companies to continue extracting our natural resources?" It's a statement that sums up the new reality. For Niger, this isn't just about uranium. It's about sovereignty, about ending decades of foreign control. And now, Europe is left scrambling for answers and new sources of the radioactive metal that keeps its lights on. For French President Emmanuel Macron, the timing couldn't be worse. He's already grappling with political turmoil back home. Now, the potential departure of Orano from Niger has become an image crisis he didn't need. The fallout isn't happening in a vacuum. Across Africa, France's long-standing partnerships are crumbling. Chad has abruptly announced the end of its defense agreement with Paris. And in Senegal, the government has confirmed plans to shut down the French military base in Dakar. One by one, the pillars of France's influence in Africa are being pulled away. Meanwhile, Orano, which has operated in Niger for over 50 years, is trying to salvage its reputation. In an official statement, the company insisted it takes a responsible approach of partnership and transparency and always acts in consultation with the Niger state and local stakeholders. Orano warned that stripping away its mining license would hurt local economies, social programs, and community development. The company highlighted that dozens of workers have been keeping operations running continuously since the mine first opened, and they pointed to big plans for the future. The Imouraren project was expected to eventually create jobs for 800 people, including subcontractors. Orano is sending signals that it doesn't want to slam the door shut. The company insists it's ready to keep all communication channels open with Niger's military government. But beneath the diplomatic language lies a threat. Orano has made it clear it reserves the right to challenge Niger's decision in national or even international courts. In other words, Orano is preparing for a legal war. And the outcome of that fight could reshape not only Niger's future, but the balance of power between France and Africa for years to come. But here's the real question we need to ask. Orano claims that Niger's decision to revoke its mining license will devastate the region's economy, social programs, and community development. But is that true? Let's look at the facts. Orano has been operating in Niger for over 50 years, and yet, through all those decades, Niger has remained one of the poorest countries in the world. Many of its people still have no reliable access to electricity, even though their land sits atop mineral deposits capable of powering nuclear energy across continents. So what real economic or social benefit has Orano brought to Niger, or to the broader Sahel region? The truth, according to multiple studies and reports, is stark. Since the French nuclear giant first set foot in Niger, it has arguably done more harm than good. Long before the coup, Orano's role had quietly shifted. It became more than just a mining company. It transformed into an agent of French soft power, using its influence to sway Niger's politics and economy. How? Through a tight network of local politicians willing to put personal gain above national interest. But it didn't stop there. A 2013 investigation revealed that Orano secured tens of millions of euros in tax breaks by negotiating mining contracts stacked in its favor. At the center of the scandal was Niger's then president, Mahamadou Issoufou. Reports suggest that in exchange for those generous tax breaks, the president received a presidential jet, courtesy of Orano. And remember the story of the Cominac mine near Arlit, a northern city home to around 100,000 people? When Orano launched that mine, it made grand promises. They vowed to fight poverty and transform Arlit into a shining mini Paris in the desert. But when the uranium was gone and the mine shut its gates, the dream vanished too. What Orano left behind was far from Paris. It was a community scarred by environmental damage, economic neglect, and broken promises. So the question lingers in the desert air. When Orano warns of harm to Niger's economy if it leaves, whose interests are they really protecting? Niger's or their own? According to a chilling investigation by Greenpeace, Orano left behind a devastating legacy at its mine site in Niger: 20 million tons of radioactive sludge. Scientists measured radiation levels soaring to 450,000 becquerels per kilogram, far beyond what international standards consider safe. This toxic waste isn't just sitting harmlessly underground. It's releasing a radioactive gas called radon, contaminating the very air the people of Arlit breathe, and seeping into the soil and groundwater. And the tragedy is, the residents of this desert city have no choice but to drink the water and breathe the air. Exposure to such extreme radiation levels has brought mysterious and deadly consequences. Diseases attacking the skin, liver, kidneys, and lungs. Our legacy is permanent contamination. There is no wildlife left in the Arlit region, said Mustafa Al-Hassan, founder of the local environmental NGO, A Geo in Man. His words carry a haunting weight. What's worse, this radioactive waste will remain active for hundreds of thousands of years. Orano should have sealed and secured the mines when they finished extracting uranium. But they didn't. They walked away, leaving behind a silent catastrophe. So we must ask the question again. When Orano warns that revoking their mining license will cause harm, how much more harm could possibly be done when the damage they've already caused is so profound and irreversible? The truth is, Orano's statements seem designed to stir emotion, as if people can't see the reality unfolding around them. The company speaks of legal battles, but one fact remains unshakable. The uranium belongs to Niger. It is Niger's resource, to manage as it sees fit. If the government decides to nationalize it, that's their sovereign right. And if Niger chooses one day to sell its uranium, or even its oil, to partners like Russia or Iran, that is simply their decision, and the world will have no choice but to respect it. So, what do you think? Should Niger stand its ground against Orano? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this.